Build that wall. Build that wall.
If you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Illegal immigrants are amazing people, they say, far
We
better
have
than
strong
you are,
arms
Mr. Entitled American.
That
We
will
had a
embrace
president who
those
deported
being
migrants
hurt.
and built
path to
hotels.
citizenship
Now
for
we have
all
a
11
president
million.
Let's cut through the noise. If you're living in 2024 and have a phone, you've likely heard that something's going on at America's southern border. It's really easy nowadays to just click away, to avoid and not care. It's also really easy to get caught up in the middle of one ideology, stuck, because you believe it's the only way. But rather than just believing a solution or a single person, it's important to know why this is important. In 2023, there were 2.5 million encounters at the southern border. 27,000 pounds of fentanyl came through. That's not only enough to kill the entire U.S. population, that's enough to kill the world. With a record amount of border encounters each month, illegal immigration right now is at the center of news, politics, and debate. Learning the history in each side's narrative before coming to a conclusion is important. So when did this all start? Throughout early American history, immigration was welcomed with little restriction. America needed laborers. Factory workers, farm hands, and specialized positions were filled by people who came from around the world to strengthen the United States. The first restrictions came from the late 19th century. A Supreme Court ruling in 1875 named Chai Lung versus Freeman stated that it was the federal government's job to make legislation in regards to immigration, not the states. Soon after, the Chinese Exclusion Act and General Immigration Act of 1882 were formed and implemented, creating the first real limitation on migration. In 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Hart-Celler Act at the base of Manhattan, with the Statue of Liberty directly behind him. This law created an equal mandate among all countries and encouraged exclusively specialized workers. This left people seeking agricultural and construction jobs with a harder way to lawfully enter the United States, starting the mass undocumented immigration from the southern border. By the mid-1980s, it's estimated that 3 to 5 million illegal immigrants were living in the United States. To fast forward some, after the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. completely overhauled its national security. Part of this process included setting up the Department of Homeland Security. A subsection of this agency was ICE, and a formal group to enforce immigration laws was put in action. Intended to be for the protection of undocumented children seeking education, DACA was formed in 2012 after multiple failed pieces of legislation. The Obama administration deported 3 million immigrants, a 50% increase from the previous one. He was controversial when it came to immigration and regarded as the deporter-in-chief by immigration support groups. You can probably remember the kids in cages controversy that was questioned whether it was Obama or Trump's administration and caused the kids to be separated from their parent. In 2015, presidential candidate Donald Trump ran on building a wall at the southern border and making Mexico fund it.
And Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
And Mexico will pay for the wall.
We're going to get the wall built, and it's going to be built right. And Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Mexico is making a fortune off the United States. Mexico is going to pay for the wall, and they're going to be happy about it.
In total, around 400 miles of wall were built. $18 billion were spent in emergency funding and executive orders, and most of the wall which was built replaced old structures. Since Biden has been in office, immigrant encounters have skyrocketed. Title 42 ended and Title 8 was put back in place. Title 42 was a program that allowed for immigrants to be deported more easily. Title 42 also had the Remain in Mexico policy, and immigrants were not allowed to come in. Under Title 8, immigrants are free to come in. However, if they are deported, they're left deported for 5 years and banned from the U.S.
We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do.
Democrats believe immigration is not just a problem to be solved, it is a defining aspect of the American character and our shared history. A negative stigma is put onto immigrants, and it is the Democratic Party's goal to change that. Rather than looking at undocumented immigrants as,
We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
look at them as people. America is a country of opportunity, born by immigrants for immigrants. Embracing immigrants through easier pathways to citizenship, protecting dreamers, and not demonizing them is the goal of the Democratic Party.
We have a shortage of workers in our country, and you see even in Florida, some of the farmers and the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down here.
They are taking on jobs that often complement the workforce that was born in this country because of the fact that they're willing to do these jobs.
Undocumented immigrants are a crucial part of the U.S. labor force. Without them, key industries such as agriculture, construction, and cleaning could lose up to 44% of their employees. Most of these roles that they serve in the workforce are unwanted by native-born citizens, which allows them to work in strenuous positions with little pay. With over 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the country, the economy is reliant on these people. Currently in the U.S., there's 8.9 million job openings with only 6.5 million unemployed, which leaves a desire for workers in the workforce. An easy solution to this problem is by allowing our undocumented workers to fill these positions. These people also stimulate and generate money for the economy. In 2016, companies started by undocumented immigrants generated over $15 billion in business income. Providing amnesty to these undocumented immigrants would also boost the U.S. GDP by over $1.5 trillion within the span of 10 years and create hundreds of thousands of new jobs.
People leave because they believe that they have a greater chance of being targeted, killed, and murdered if they stay than the odds of them being killed if they go on that journey.
I thought that was part of what we did here in the United States. We welcomed people, invited people who were going through crap in the countries they lived in, getting abused in the countries they lived in. I thought we asked people to come here.
Sending undocumented immigrants back to their country of origin would strip them of their current homes and life, forcing them back to worse living conditions. These immigrants are here to flee religious, cultural, and social persecution from their government, and deporting them is inhumane. Crime and gang violence are also rampant in some Latin American countries. Just recently, Haiti was essentially taken over by gangs. They've taken over 80% of the capital. Prisons have been broken into, and prisoners have been released. The Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has been pressured to resign, and over 15,000 people and families have been relocated. Honduras and El Salvador are both among the top 10 in crime rates, both of which have hundreds of thousands of citizens that have immigrated to the U.S. Patricia Hernandez fled her town in El Salvador after being raped and stabbed. David Maldonado fled Honduras after being shot twice by a 9mm pistol. Albertina Contreras fled her town in Guatemala after being raped. By sending these people back to their original country, it's stripping them of the dangerous months of progress that they took to get to and cross the border.
Finally, if we're serious about economic growth, it is time to heed the call of business leaders, labor leaders, faith leaders, law enforcement, and fix our broken immigration system.
And I believe that we can accomplish what should have been done years ago. And that is that the American people want comprehensive immigration reform.
Today, the ideology that's being pushed in the media is we need to protect the border first. By not fixing the borders, we're letting drugs and criminals surge the country. But while we can and must limit the amount of criminals entering the country, we can still allow families to stay together and have comprehensive immigration reform. Undocumented immigrants pay billions in taxes annually, and the vast majority are families and people looking to work. Eliminating the 3- and 10-year bars that exist for undocumented immigrants is one of the first things that can be done. These bars don't allow for immigrants to apply for citizenship or a visa after being unlawfully in the United States for over 180 days. We should expand the amount of H-1B and H-2 visas given, as this would allow for more immigrants to seek higher education or a worker's status. We should provide further protections for Dreamers and DACA recipients so they don't have to be in fear of being deported. Increase the refugee cap from 125,000 to higher. Instead of demonizing these people, we should recognize them as humans, trying to make better for themselves in the land of opportunity. As a country, we stand for opportunity and freedom and should extend that to as many people as possible.
We have to have strong borders. We have to keep the drugs out of our country. Right now, we're getting the drugs, they're getting the cash. We need strong borders. We need we cannot give amnesty. Now, I want to build the wall. We need the wall. But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out. We stop.
The onslaught of illegal aliens invading our wide-open borders threatens public safety, drains the treasury, undermines U.S. workers, and burdens schools and hospitals. Since the Biden administration, at least 7 million illegal immigrants have come to the border, with at least 2 million entering. Without a way to properly identify or vet these people, Americans don't know who's entering the country. They could be dangerous and criminals. If they're willing to break the law to enter the country, what other laws are they willing to break? Thousands of pounds of drugs flood the border every year. Illegal immigrants burden our economy. With the country's immigration crisis, we need to secure our border and protect it for the years to come.
By the way, the people you saw are the ones who just want to be caught. They're turning themselves in so they can get bused to your town. There are a lot of people who don't want to be caught, and those people are bringing in fentanyl, which is killing thousands of Americans every month.
This is just absolutely ridiculous. We got fentanyl killing people all over the place.
In 2023, there were 112,000 deaths from overdoses. Only 6 years ago, that number was only 65,000. The amount of drug deaths has consistently risen throughout the last 25 years. 42% of people in the United States personally know someone who's died of overdose. Nicholas Dominici was a 1-year-old who died of fentanyl overdose after inhaling the drug underneath a mat at his daycare. Denevin Hester, 16 years old, died from a fentanyl overdose after being exposed to it in school. Homeland Security seized over 1.2 million pounds of drugs in just 2023. With thousands of pounds of drugs being seized at the border, it's assumed that thousands more unlawfully enter the United States. We need to protect our citizens from this drug epidemic, and it starts with not allowing them to get into the country. We need to enforce our laws at the border to limit these unlawful substances, which kills thousands.
And also, too often, with criminal aliens in the country, it's bringing heartbreak.
The ranchers who find dead bodies, who find migrants sitting along the Rio Grande, they're all sitting there, they're calling me today. All of those were documented under the statistics in Texas for DPS as the crimes committed by illegal aliens in the state of Texas. And those numbers have done nothing but go up under this administration.
Laken Riley was a 22-year-old nursing student when she decided to go out for a night run on February 22nd of 2024. While running on the University of Georgia's campus in Athens, Georgia, she was killed. Blunt force trauma to the head. The murderer, 26-year-old Jose Ibarra, is an illegal immigrant who entered the country on September 8th, 2022. According to ICE, he was arrested on August 31st of 2023 for acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 and a motor vehicle license violation. He wasn't deported back to his home country. He wasn't left in Mexico to be processed. Instead, we allowed him to reside in the United States. This isn't the only story of an illegal immigrant who's committed a heinous act. 1,713 illegal immigrants were detained for homicide in 2023. 4,390 were detained for sexual assault. 1,655 for kidnapping. Since 2021, 294 known terrorists have been apprehended at the border. These people need to be stopped. By allowing these people into the country, our legislature, executive, and laws all have the blood of thousands on their hands. If we're not properly securing our border, we could have terrorists living in our country. While the vast majority of illegal immigrants aren't terrorists or gang members, some of them are. and we need a way to stop them from entering the country.
Adams' debit card program for migrants will reportedly give migrants up to $10,000 each in taxpayer money with no ID check, no restrictions, and no fraud control. So we're just going to keep piling money at these people after they illegally broke into the country and broke the law as their number one thing in America, Krisha.
Illegal immigrants are net consumers of taxpayer-funded services, and the relatively small amount that this population pays in taxes doesn't even come close to offsetting the increasing costs that are imposed on U.S. taxpayers.
The money illegal immigrants put into the country puts nowhere near the amount it costs the U.S. According to Stephen A. Camarota, the director of research for the Center of Immigration Studies, each illegal immigrant that enters the country causes the economy a net loss of $68,000 over their lifetime. If you multiply this number by the number of illegal immigrants that the Biden administration has let in, which is estimated to be around 2.7 million, you end up with a loss of $186.3 billion. Providing amnesty to these people would increase the amount of money spent, as they would be available for Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment benefits. Robert Rector of the Heritage Foundation states that if amnesty is enacted, the average adult unlawful immigrant would receive $592,000 more in government benefits over the course of his remaining lifetime than he would pay in taxes. The people of the United States would suffer under these deficits. The national debt would rise. This also undermines the point of legal immigration. If one can enter illegally, be provided amnesty, and receive benefits, what's the point of migrating legally?
Well, the country is now waking up to what is the single greatest national security threat in our lifetime. Polls now show it is by far and away the number one issue for more Americans.
The immigration crisis is still in full effect, with no sign of slowing down. Drugs will pour through the border, more terrorists and criminals will come through. Americans won't know who's entering the country. We need to continue building the border wall so illegal immigrants won't be able to get through in between ports of entry. We need to technologically improve our systems at the border. We need to not grant illegal immigrants asylum if they've committed felonies or other serious crimes. And most importantly, we need to protect Americans first before we can care for anybody else. Both sides, right and left, are saying correct things. Undocumented immigrants do fill jobs. Illegal aliens do smuggle drugs. However, both sides also glorify certain statistics and refrain from others. While the left likes to humanize illegal migrants, they also don't like to recognize their wrongdoings or even call them illegal. While the right likes to talk about how illegal immigrants are gang members and criminals, they're actually less likely to be charged with a crime than a native-born citizen. The solution to this problem isn't easy. If it was, it would have already been done. Immigration reform and security has been talked about for decades, and a clear answer hasn't been formed. Propaganda from each side would have you believe that people sitting on the other side of the aisle are monsters who just want to kill innocent people. Immigration is at the hot seat right now, being debated and talked about constantly by the media. Doing your own research and educating yourself is maybe the most important and empowering thing you can do. Come to your own conclusions, form your own opinion, because the media and the government want you to believe one of two things. But that's just polarized politics.
What